Let's turn our attention to King Charles and his coronation coming up in less than a month on May the 6th. Rupert Bell is our royal correspondent and joins us. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Good morning. I mean, it just seems to be non-stop discussion of the coronation, whether it's, carriages and air conditioning and who's invited and who's not invited. We'll come on to a bit of Harry and Meghan, inevitably. But the latest row is over the Church of England bishops and others worried that King Charles in his service, he's actually sort of basically, for all intents and purposes, sort of breaking the law in terms of the coronation service, wanting to be, he says, he's the defender of the faith as head of state and also the head of the Church of England. But he says he wants to be, defender of all faiths. But having people from other faiths actually reading, reading passages in the service, they're saying can't happen because this is a Protestant service. That's the whole point of it. What on earth is he thinking?
Well, it's a complicated one because he wants to be seen as an inclusive monarch. And I suppose, given the way the world has moved since 1953, he feels he wants to feel more inclusive. But as you're absolutely right, he is defender of the Protestant faith. And that is the whole basis for the coronation service, as his role is not only head of state in this country, but also head of the church, the Anglican Church. And this is the balancing act between the King's wishes to try and be a more inclusive monarch and the religious aspect of the coronation service, which is based in the Christian teachings. And that's what he is trying to see if he can bring in a more faith element.
But this is the thing I don't understand. No, you're a Protestant. You're head of the whole point. The reason why your family is the head of state family is because of that Protestant background. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is an established church. I'm an atheist. And I don't have any problem with this. I mean, we should either have a disestablished church, but that's a constitutional debate, a referendum maybe. Love a referendum, me, as you know. But that's a debate that the country should have. It's not up to the King to make that decision himself.
No, it's not. But he is the head of that church, if you think in technical terms. So maybe he has some input. And the King does, and I've been reading as we have about the coronation, he is taking a very much a hands-on approach and at various aspects of the coronation. And this is one of them, but it is the most important symbolism of the whole day when he's going to be anointed and crowned. And it is the religious aspect. That's why we have a coronation. Yeah. Forget all the other flim-flam that's going on around the coronation. This is the most significant point. And he has to get that right. And the church have to get it right, because we are still a Christian country.
Ostensibly, yes. But again, that's the thing I just find extraordinary, that he gets himself into these states. Of course, inviting, absolutely, having a senior role and the heads of, the Jewish, Muslim, Hindu and other faiths sitting, in good seats ahead of Harry and Meghan in the Abbey sounds like a good idea, and I'm all for that. But he always goes too far, and I think it's such a misjudgment. It's the sort of misjudgment that the Queen wouldn't have made. Another misjudgment, slave reparations. He has not ruled out the royal family paying reparations for their historical links to the slave trade. I mean, again, we're hearing this everywhere. America is obsessed with this. For some reason, some idiots who have never read a single history book have decided that uniquely the Americans and the British invented slavery, were the only people who've ever done this, and are uniquely evil in having done so, ignoring the fact that every single society and empire has had slavery until, by the way, Britain ended the slave trade across the Atlantic. We spent millions. Until 2015, we were still paying off the debt of paying what was equivalent at the time of billions of pounds to basically buy the freedom of slaves, compensating slave owners for those people. I still find it extraordinary anyone even is willing to have a conversation about this, but the King already walking into controversy on this.
Yeah, and this is the area that he's got to be careful about, because in many ways you can't apologise for some things that happened with William the First, or whichever William the Third back in the day. This is the problem for the monarchy. How do they try and just look forward? Now, to start apologising for things that happened 200 years ago is difficult. When you say America and Britain, what about Spain and Portugal? They didn't look after people particularly well as well.
What about the Roman empire. Every empire has slavery's continued even after we controlled it on the seas. There was a huge amount of money and effort was spent by the British government, the British Navy, to prevent slave trade across the Atlantic. And everyone who thinks that we should pay reparations they completely forget about that.
They do, and this, again, the monarchy don't need to get involved in certain things. He should just be concentrating on ensuring that he appears relevant now, going out, meeting people, doing what he does well and has done well since he became king.
I don't think he can stop himself. I just don't. I think that's, and I've said this to you before, I think that's the problem with him. I mean, he wants to be woke. You can't be woke and be a king. These are mutually exclusive. Let's also talk finally the coronation. Let's talk about eco activists trying to disrupt it. We've got a much shorter route than his mother had. I'm guessing because he realises there won't be the same crowds. People aren't having the parties. But there's also interesting still question marks about whether or not Harry and Meghan are going to come. And are they arguing about whether or not they can bring their kids and whether their kids are on the balcony or not at Buckingham Palace? I mean, how people have time to worry about this stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, when it comes to the route, I think it's actually security issues. They just don't have the number of troops available to do the street lining and everything else. So I think there just
won't be enough crowds on the street. That's why.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think there are huge practical reasons. They said they were worried about there weren't going to be crowds at the Platinum Jubilee. I do think this will be slightly different. It's a very different field, but I do think they can manage it because there is a huge security issue at play here. And there are practical reasons. There aren't the people, and it's a different type of coronation. We're not suddenly going to have 10 heads of Commonwealth in the procession as we did last time.
Okay. All right, Rupert, we'll leave it there. Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, thank you very much. Also, there's a Sun front page. This is the former head of the army, General Sir Mike Jackson, saying that the Queen told him that she wanted William and Harry to join the war in Afghanistan. I'm saying, well, we know, Harry did join the war in Afghanistan, and we know that it was a security concern for him that stopped him doing so. They were trained up. That was what they were supposed to do. Benedict Spence, again, King can't keep away from controversy, can he?
I think the Catholic Church should have a bit of mischief and try to marry this idea of defender of the faiths and reparations by asking for some money for all of the monasteries that the Protestants dissolved and the cathedrals that you took. Because that would, he'd have to have a very long and hard conversation with himself about that, wouldn't he?
Again, the reparations thing, it's the idea that, again, that my working class grandparents and all their relatives, back in Ireland, but the idea that they in any way benefited from the slave trade, do go away.